two together. So we'll take a look, or not book two, section two. We'll go over section 3 right now. If you want me to do a recording for book or for section 2, I can definitely do that. Right now we'll just carry on with chapter 3 of book 1, which is a little bit longer. It has a couple of long sentences in here, but I think it does a good job of kind of showing the logical flow of Caesar's writing. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We were introduced in number 2, in chapter 2, to Orgetorix, who wants to kind of trying to convince the Helvetians to kind of move from Helvetia, Switzerland, into kind of France, or what becomes modern day France. So, saying that the region is too small for them, and they're the fiercest of all the Gauls, so they should have the best land. So, his rebus adducti, encouraged by these things, inspired by these things, convinced perhaps. Literally, it's just ad plus ducti, right? Led to this argument of his by these things, by all the facts that he stated. So encouraged by all of his things, or by these things, the size of the land, their own valor, and also also I guess permoti. So you get this kind of echoing effect, right? His rebus adducti et actoritate Orgetorix permoti. Encouraged by these things and moved by the authority of Orgetorix, moved, inspired, convinced. Again, adducti and permoti, similar meanings. By the authority of Orgetorix, they decided to do a whole lot of infinitives. So here's our main verb of the sentence, and we're going to get followed by look at all of these infinitives as we go through here. They decided to comparare, they decide to coemere, they decide to facere, and they decide to confirmare. So we can go at this point, once we've got constituerunt, we can go from infinitive to infinitive. So they decided to comparare, to obtain, to gather. What are they going to gather? They're going to gather ea quae, those things which ad proficiscendum pertinerent, the things which pertain, English word, right, which pertain ad proficiscendum, which pertain to setting out. Ad plus a gerund here, just kind of showing, I'd say, purpose in this case. They pertain for the purpose, or kind of are useful for the purpose of setting out. So that's one thing to decide to do, to obtain the goods which pertain to setting out. Iumentorum et carorum quam maximum numerum coemera. They decided to coemera, to buy up, to gather. It's emera, to purchase, with just kind of like together or gather or something, right? So they decided to kind of buy up. Quam maximum numerum, your accusative here, to gather up as great a number as possible of iumentorum et carorum, of wagons and carriages, of wagons and carts, something like that. Iumentorum and carorum are similar. They're both modes of transportation. They decide to make sementes, quam maximas, so to make sowings, so to sow grain, quam maximas, as great as possible. So quam maximas, quam maximum. So they decided to do that, to make as much sowing as possible, again, of grain, purpose, so that on the journey, the supply, the copio frumenti, the supply of grain, kind of like would be there, so they would have or supply the supplies of grain. So they want to make sure that they're going to have enough food on the journey. And with their proximis civitatibus, with their nearest neighbors, they decided, constituerunt, to establish, to confirm peace and friendship with their nearest allies. So they don't want to have any wars for the next few years so that they can get prepared to leave. Very hard to prepare to leave when you're constantly fighting off the enemy. So, you go, all these infinitives, all these things the Helvetians decided to do thanks to Orgetrix, right? They decided to gain the things, to gather the things which pertain to setting out, to buy up as many carts and wagons as they can, to sow as much grain as possible so that they will have it on their journey, and to confirm peace with their nearby neighbors. No ets in here. Notice that you could call this asyndeton because he's not using any connectors between the different clauses. It's just clause, 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 clause. So it kind of speeds up the action, you could say. It also kind of makes it feel perhaps like there's more going on than there is. It's just kind of like this huge rush of activity. Right. Ad eas res conficiendas, biennium sibi satis esse duxerunt, in tertium annum profectionem lege confirmat. So, ad eas res conficiendas, ad plus a gerundive here, but the same purpose as we had for ad proficiscendum. It's going to show purpose. So, you can just translate as to do, right? Ad conficiendas, to accomplish these things, or for the purpose of accomplishing these things, right? So, to accomplish these things, duxerunt, a weird usage of duxerunt here. It's not uncommon. I think Caesar's going to use this particular meaning quite a bit. I think when we do Virgil, he will use duxerunt as well. It's not lead in this case, as in how like a duck might lead her baby ducks or something. This is more like to think or consider. I guess the idea is like kind of leading out the thought and kind of bringing people along with you in this line of thinking is perhaps the idea. So it's kind of more of leading by thought as opposed to leading physically. You can just say like they thought in this case. So keep that in mind when you're translating duxerunt. Sometimes it's lead and sometimes it's more to think. So they thought that indirect statement. Here's your indirect statement. They thought that a biennium, they thought that a 2-year period was enough for them, ad eas reas conficiendas, to accomplish these things. And into the third year, or really in the third year, I don't know why he uses an accusative here. I would expect an ablative, especially from Caesar. But in the third year, they established the setting out. They confirmed the leaving by law, in law, with law, ablative of how they do it, right? So they make it a law that you have to leave. You don't get to stay behind. You either come with us. I don't know what the punishment is. Do they kill the people who want to stay? Do they just kidnap them and bring them? I don't know. But it is a royal decree that they will set out in the third year. Ad eas res conficiendas, ad eas res conficiendas. You'd think I'd get better at saying that the more I do it, but no. To accomplish these things, same exact meaning, orgetrix delegator, is chosen, is delegated, would be just fine. So Orgetrix is chosen to lead these things, which makes sense, right? He's the one who came up with this idea. He should probably be the one to kind of make it happen. Nice short sentence there. Nice couple of short sentences. Gonna prepare us for the super long sentence coming forward. One more short sentence. Is he, that is Orgetrix, the guy I just mentioned, Orgetrix undertakes the legationem, suscipit to undertake, literally, sub plus capio. So he undertakes the embassy to the nations. The ambassadorship to the nations, legationem, is just kind of like the official state messenger role. So he undertakes, or kind of puts the ambassadorship to the states, sibi, upon himself. So he takes it upon himself to do this. So rather than delegating that action, that role to somebody, he is choosing to go and talk with the neighboring allies himself. Which again, good. This is all your idea. You do it. All right. Ooh, look at that sentence. In eo itinera, persuadet castico, catamantoloides filio, sequano, cuius pater regnum in sequanis multos annos obtinuerat, et a senatu populi Romani amicos appellatus erat, ut regnum in civitate sua occuparet, quod pater ante habuerit. Itemque dum norigi aeduo, fratri diviaci, qui eo tempore princip patem in civitate obtinebat, ac maxime plebe acceptus erat, ut idem conaretur persuadet, quod filiam suum in matrimonium dat. Whew. That's a chunky sentence. But we do have a semicolon to break it up in the middle, right? So we can divide this into two halves. And the two halves are basically, once we get the first half, the second half is him just saying, yeah, he told him to do the same thing. So, spoilers. So, like I said, when I get a long sentence like this, I like to go from punctuation to punctuation. I like to break it down as much as I can. Try not to think too hard. Try not necessarily to sort everything while I'm going through it. Just try to kind of get the idea of each individual chunk. So, in eo itinera, prepositional phrase. So on this journey, persuaded. He persuades. Okay. Casticus. Dative object of persuaded. So on this journey, he persuades Casticus. Catamontaloidus filio. Catamontaloidus, just a fantastic name in the genitive. So Casticus, the son of Catamontaloidus. Sequano is just his nationality in this case. So Casticus, a Sequanan, the son of Catamontaloidus, whose father, cuius, genitive of the relative pronoun referring back to Casticus, whose father had obtained the kingdom, or the ruling, had obtained reign in the Sequani, among the Sequani, multos annos, for many years, accusative of duration of time. So, without putting those back in order, I know that that Orgetrix is going on a journey, and he has convinced a guy, or he's trying to persuade a guy to do something. And this guy's father had been a king before. All right, what else? And presumably he obtained. So we're still going. Look at this long relative clause. So whose father had obtained rule in the Sequani for many years, and whose father had been called appellatus erat. He had been called an amicus. This is kind of an official title. It's weird to see that word just kind of thrown there, but he had been called an amicus. He'd been called a friend, a senatu populi Romani, by the Senate of the Roman people. I think populi Romani should go with senatu because, one, it's usually how the Senate is referred to. Its kind of full title is the Senate of the Roman people. Like saying the United States of America, right? As opposed, you can say just the United States, you can say just the Senate, and everybody knows what you're talking about. But it's kind of official thing is they are the Senate of the Roman people. So Populi Romani, probably going with Senatu because it's kind of an official title. Also, genitives tend to follow the thing that they are describing. So the Senate of the Roman people. However, it's not crazy to put Populi Romani also with amicus. He was called a friend of the Roman people by the Senate. So all of this bit here is describing Casticus's father. All right, so Casticus is the cuius here, and then pater is actually Catamontaloidus. So I feel like this part is all way more complicated than it needs to be. He could have just said he persuaded Casticus, the son of Catamontaloidus, who had done something, but he's a bit redundant. It's entirely possible also that this was added later by some sort of editor, that maybe this isn't Caesar's initial writings. That's a possibility. He persuaded him. Okay, what he persuaded him to do? Ut. There's our indirect command. So he persuaded him to occuparet, to occupy, to seize, to take hold of the reign, the kingdom, the regnum, in civitate sua, to obtain the kingship in his own state. Quote here, I'm taking as a relative pronoun with regnum to obtain the kingdom which his father had held before. It's not entirely wrong to say to obtain the kingdom because his father had held it before. And that makes sense, right? It's like, hey, your father was a king. Why aren't you the king? You should also be the king because your father was the king. And so, oh, okay. I think it's more. I think it's a relative pronoun more likely, but I don't think you'd be wrong to translate it as a because. So, on this journey, Orgetorix is persuading Casticus to occupy, to seize control in his nation, the control which his father had held before. And his father had been called a friend of the Roman people and had held rule in the Sequani for many years. This half sentence, very long, and I think it's easy to get lost, but also I think you can just kind of sort it however you want. You can put these different phrases in different orders. I think if you take them as they come, it works. If you want to try to rearrange them, you can. But ultimately, like, it's long and daunting, but relatively straightforward. We're not, we have to go back to persuadet to find out why we said ut, and we may have forgotten that in the last 5 minutes. But aside from that, it's pretty straightforward and logical, I think. As any long sentence is going to be in whatever language. We get a semicolon, which is nice on the editor's part to help us kind of divide it up. Because we're going to get the second half of this sentence. Item qua, the qua here acting as a divider as well. And item likewise, and in a similar matter, Dumnorix, the Hyduan, name and ethnicity here. So, Dumnorix, the Hyduan, the brother of Diviciacus. If we look at these words, we can see that Dumnorigi is not a nominative or an accusative, right? It's some other case. We're going to find out why it's that case eventually. But Dumnorix, the Hyduan, the brother of Diviciacus, who, and I believe again referring to Dumnorix, who, eo tempore, in that time, principatum inquitate obtenebat, who in that time was holding the head position, kind of like the chief office, the principate, if you want. It must be a difference between a principatum and a regnum. Perhaps the principatum is more elected, whereas regnum isn't. I don't know. But he's obtaining kind of chief leadership in his civitas, in his state. And so who had obtained this principate and who had been accepted maxime plebi. He had been accepted very much. He'd been accepted the greatest by the plebs. So Diviciacus here is, or not Diviciacus, sorry, Dumnorix is very popular in this case. So he'd been accepted by the plebs very much, or the most. So he is, it'll be easy for him to kind of convince other people to do whatever he needs to do. Sorry, cat. Yes, well. All right. So, Dumnorix, this is, we're going to find out, also in the dative. Dumnorigi is in the dative, just like Castico is in the dative, because ut idem conaretur persuadet. To try the same thing, he persuades him. So likewise, he persuades Dumnorix, the Hyduan, who had done all these things, to try the same thing. That is, he persuades him to try to kind of seize kind of absolute control over the state or the nation that he lives in. It might be easier for him to do that because he's already, a head, a chief official, and the plebs like him a lot. Eiqua, and to him, A here, just dative referring back to Dumnorix, and to him, he gives his daughter in marriage, in matrimonium. So Orgetorix gives his daughter to Dumnorix in marriage as as a way to kind of formalize this alliance that they're trying to create, and just kind of make it all go a little bit smoother. So there you go. Nice long bit there, but again, relatively straightforward, I think. Also, this starts to sound kind of similar to what Julius Caesar himself does. This is taking place around 60 BC. Caesar himself does this where he forms a triumvirate, right? He gets two others, Crassus and Pompey. They kind of like work together to kind of control Rome. Caesar gives his daughter in marriage to Pompey. There's a lot of similarities between the story of Vercingetorix and the story of Julius Caesar. It's weird. You would think he would have learned. All right. Next sentence. Another longer sentence. Per facile factu esse illis probat, conata perficera, propteria quod ipse sua civitatis imperium obtenturus esset. Non esse dumium quin totius Galliae plurimum Helveti possent, se cuius copis suoco exercitu illis regna conciliaturum confirmat. All right. This first bit is it's a little weird. You can really go to the comma. It's easier to break it apart, even smaller than that. We have a supine in here with factu. So I'm just gonna I'll do the sentence first, and then I'll kind of explain what's going on. So I'd say proves here. He proves to them. So that is Orgetorix proves to Dumnorix and Casticus that per facile factu esse conata perficera, that it was easy to do these things, that is, to accomplish the attempts. Or perhaps you could say he proves to them that to accomplish their goals, to accomplish their attempts, was easy to do. So, conata, perfect, or not perfect, well, it is a perfect participle, or at least comes from a perfect participle. This is the neuter accusative plural of conatum. So, a thing having been tried, essentially. So, to accomplish the things having been tried, it is per facile factu. Per facile, just a third declension neuter adjective. It is easy to accomplish. That's the idea. And then factu here is a supine showing in what way it's easy. It is easy to do the things that they're going to try to do. So it's one of those sentences where, yep, that looks great in English. But it's a lot of weird kind of grammar, I feel. Or it looks weird. It looks fine in Latin. It's a little bit weirder in English. So ultimately, he proves to them that it's easy to do, the things that they're trying to do. Propter quod. Because he himself, obtenturus esset, he himself was going to, obtenturus, future participle here, right? That he was going to obtain, obtaining, right? He was going to obtain the imperium. He's going to obtain the power, sua civitatis, of his own state. So look, Casticus, you can gain control, regnum insequani. You can do this, And Doomrix, you can gain control of your Kiwitas because I'm going to do the very same thing. I'm going to obtain control of my state, right? So he said he was going to be easy to do because he himself was going to obtain power of his state. He also said that, or proved that, more indirect statement, there was no doubt, non esse dubbium, there was no doubt, Quinn, like, but that, Quinn is, it's a weird word. There was no doubt, basically you could just say that. There was no doubt that the Helvetians, kind of, plurimum possent, not so much to be able, but perhaps were capable, might be a better way of translating it, or just powerful. There's no doubt but that the Helvetians were the plurimum possent. They could the most of all of Gaul, right? They could the most, and so they were the most capable of all of Gaul, might be a kind of natural way of translating that. We're used to possent in our textbooks when we're learning. It's like, well, it means to be able, and it takes an infinitive. There's no infinitive. Just the Helvetians were able the most. You're like, okay, so they were the most capable. Here's confirmed again. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to say swears, but kind of he affirms, he declares that he will conciliaturum illis regna. He will kind of, you could say reconcile. He will join. He will join the kingdoms for them. He will kind of, reconcile the kingdoms for them. Suis copis suoco executu. With his resources, ablative of means, with his resources and with his army. Suoco executu. So, don't worry. I have a plan. I have the resources. We're going to get this done. So that's what Orgetrix does. He kind of swears that he will kind of, or affirms, declares that he will kind of bring these three nations together, his, Doomrix's, and Casticus's, and all of Helvetia will take over all of Gaul. Hooray. Hac oratione adducti, inter se fidum et jus iurandum dant, et regno occupato per tres potentissimos ac firmissimos populos totius Gallae sese potere posse sperant. Hac oratione adducti, echoing kind of the beginning of this thing, right? His rebus adducti. So inspired by this speech, encouraged by this speech, convinced by this speech. Among themselves, or, among each other, they dant fidem, they give faith and oaths, jus iurandum. These are oaths or treaties or something like that. So they kind of they swear an alliance or a pact. Here you kind of get fidem and jus iurandum, kind of the physical and abstract idea of the same thing. The fidem is kind of, I think, the general idea of faith, whereas jus iurandum is like the physical kind of contract, is like the actual like shaking of hands and exchanging, whatever you might exchange. It's like this kind of, that's one of the physical idea of like a literal like signing a contract, whereas fidem is just, and I promise I'll hold to my word. So they give to each other loyalty and oaths, or an oath. And ablative absolute, but kind of with this almost a future aspect. With the kingdom occupied, that is kind of like once the kingdom is occupied, by the pair here is by with occupato. We might expect something like ob plus an ablative for something to be occupied by means of something, but this is, you can use pair for that as well. You often swear
swear per deos, like through the gods or by the gods. So with a kingdom occupied by the three most powerful and sturdy peoples, they hope, this little triumvirate that's been made, they hope that they are able to kind of control their hope, that they're able to kind of seize Totius Galli. I think I want Totius Galli to be Galliot to be the object of Potiri, because I do believe Potiri takes a genitive, so they're able to kind of seize control of all of Gaul. Because technically they're more held. They're not. I don't think they're technically Gauls, so I wouldn't say that they're the most powerful and sturdy people of all of Gaul. I think it's more they hope that of all of Gaul they will be able to seize power. But yeah, I think you could take it both ways there. All right, that does it for chapter 3. Another long section. Hopefully you hopefully if you you're able to understand what's going on. If you have any questions, let me know. I will eventually post this to YouTube. I realize that I'm actually streaming right now and not recording, so I'll check chat in a little bit. But yeah, if you have questions, let me know. Like I said, I'll post it on YouTube. You can put your comments there. You can email me or just hit me up in a class. Next time, we will take a look at probably chapters 4 and 5. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you later.